This podcast is sponsored by Teens and Youth in Leadership, TYIL Africa, an organization that is committed to raising generations of young leaders across Africa. Our programs include leadership education, leadership fellowship, research training, webinars, and conferences. Stay informed of our programs by following us on LinkedIn at TYIL and at TYIL Africa on Instagram.
Hello, my name is Israel Idari. I'm a social scientist and a pragmatist. As a social scientist, my research is focused on understanding how youth develop leadership to make social change within their communities and immediate environment. I'd like to invite you to this podcast where I interview and have conversations with scholars and practitioners on their perspective on leadership, followership, and social change. I hope you truly learn from this podcast. Have fun. I'm so excited to have Sharna here. Sharna is an internationally recognized tango artist who discusses about leader-follower dynamics. Sharna, you're welcome to my podcast show.
Thank you so much, Israel. It's my pleasure to be here.
How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Same here. So many people dance for fun, some people for recreational activities. You dance for purpose. I know you do all of these things, but then you also dance for purpose. How and at what stage did you realize that you could do that?
I think it sort of came to me gradually over the years as I started teaching. I was very fortunate to learn tango from teachers who wanted to share both roles with me. And so I learned both leading and following from the beginning. And then when I started teaching, I did that too. And I saw in my students how that method changed them and gave them language and metaphors for healthy relationships in other parts of their lives. And so I started to see over the years how it wasn't, of course, it's fun, right? Dancing is fun and it should always be fun and creative. And I love that about it. But it was evident to me in my observation of other dancers and my students and colleagues that there was something deeper about tango specifically because of the leading and following roles. And that gave me a lot of purpose as a teacher, and then later as a writer and organizer, right? Both within the dance community and then outside in the followership community, to continue presenting dance and presenting, just leading and following relationships, because I saw how powerful they were and how they enriched people's lives, I guess.
Yeah, I I'm a huge fan of your work, and I follow the Lead and Follow podcast. And one of the striking thing about the podcast is how you bring tango, but then you talk about followership and leadership sometimes, but you utilize tango to explaining followership concepts and ideas. And many people have adopted your work. Many people have utilized, your scenarios in teaching. How did the journey into exploring followership begin for you?
Well, in a dance like tango or any partner dance, really, ballroom, salsa, swing, but tango especially because it doesn't have a basic step. So it's very much reliant on the leading and following relationship. It's built in, right? So on day one, your first tango class, some teacher is going to say to you, okay, we have someone leading and we have someone following, right? And both of those things are important and you need to learn, I have everyone learn both of them, but at least you need to appreciate both of them, even if you're not doing them. And you go from there, right? So your whole education is about how to embody these roles and how they work together. And very quickly, you realize how they're different, how they're similar, how they depend on each other, their interdependence. And so, starting for me was, I guess, back in 1997 when I stumbled into partner dance, and realized, oh, it's all about these roles and collaboration and connection. And then it just kind of grew from there and became deeper and deeper, over time. But it's built into to dance, I guess, not only tango, but to all improvised forms.
Yeah, thank you. So there was a video you did where you created a scenario and you explained different categories of following. You explained that there is graceful following where a follower actually shows grace and they work with their leader. There is weak following. There are followers actually who fight against their leaders. Do you think anything has changed since you did this video so many years ago?
Well, first, I guess I want to say there's lots more kinds of following, right? So there's kind of as many ways as you can think of, right? We're very diverse as human beings, and we can embody leading and following in lots of different ways. But those examples seem to be very obvious, right? So that's why we chose them when I collaborated with Ira Chaleff to make that video. And I think they also mapped pretty well onto the workplace and onto organizational life, which is why we chose those ones in particular. So, no, I don't think anything has changed. I think those things still exist, right? You can probably still identify the people you work with as, oh, this person is really graceful when they're working with their leader. This person is resistant or fighting. This person is kind of passive, right? And doesn't take any initiative. They just wait to do what they're told. And those things exist on the dance floor and they exist in the workplace. And they're not fixed, right? I'll say also, I think there's a tendency when we analyze ourselves to think, oh, I'm this way all the time, and that's not true, right? We change all the time. We change with different partners, right? With different people we interact with. And so I would, I guess, encourage listeners to know that they too can change how they show up as followers, how they show up as leaders, depending on what room they're in, what meeting they're in, what company they're in, based on what's needed, right? Sometimes you need to resist a little bit, right? Sometimes you need to be more graceful, more flowing. But there's a full range of responses that are available when you are following someone, and being attentive to them and listening to them will tell you what's needed, right, in that partnership or in that context. Like, how do I need to be right now to get the best outcome? And that's a huge part of following, as well as leading, is like, what's needed here? How can I support? How can I respond? How can I react to what's going on?
Hmm. So, how important is learning about followership to a leadership process?
I mean, you're talking to a tango dancer. So, for me, you can't really separate them, That's why I think I love the partner image, right? So when you see the two dancers together, you realize you have to do it together, right? There's two roles. And I really think those roles that we call, leadership and followership are intrinsic human roles, like human ways of being with each other. I think the word followership is tricky. It has a lot of negative connotation on it, but whether you call it followership or whether you call it something else, we all need to be able to listen well, to get our work done, to be present, to respond to other people, to support other people. So these are all just examples of skills that, I would put under the realm of followership, but everyone needs to do those, and so it doesn't seem to me like an add-on or something optional. It seems like if you want to have good leadership in an organization or in a team, if you want to have good outcomes in an organization or in a team, then you need whatever it is that we call followership. Like, you need all those skills present, and you need all the leadership skills. You can't get successful outcomes. You can't have people work well together if you don't have both of those ways of being that are complementary going on in any group. And we could talk more about specifically like how I would define leading and following, because I think that's when it gets tricky. But it's just like speaking and listening. To me, it's like you can't have a great conversation if there isn't both speaking and listening going on.
Yeah, I know we didn't talk about this before the podcast, but you've traveled across different countries. You have taught tango. You've been recognized as an international tango artist. What do you think? Have you seen anything different across cultures that has to do with, how they do tango and something that can, probably enhance our understanding of global leadership and followership?
Yes, there are definitely some regional flavors. I really can't speak to all the cultures of the world who dance tango because there are so many. But yes, absolutely. And again, because improvised dance is very much interpretive and it's reflective of your own values, right? What's important to you. It is interpreted differently, both based on cultural variations and also just individual variations, right? Like what's important to me on the dance floor is different than like what might be important to you. Like what kind of a relationship do you want to experience? Do you want to feel energized and creative today, or do you want to feel protected and safe? Those are like just two examples. Yeah, so I don't want to speak for like other cultures, but there's both some regional difference just in terms of trend and style, and also how tango developed, in certain cities or countries, has its own kind of value system. There's a spectrum that is more performative, right, and competitive, and large and big, and that is one kind of tango, and it's beautiful to look at, especially, right. And then on the other end of the spectrum is something that's quieter and more intimate and small and more subtle, and also beautiful, right. So those are not like a hierarchy, like good or bad. It's a spectrum, and some communities tend towards one end of the spectrum or the other, or even within one community, there'll be different groups who move more in one or the other direction. It's just one example.
Thank you for sharing that. So, what's the nicest and most, fulfilling comment you have received since you started teaching tango, and perhaps since you started talking about followership in relations to tango? And why did it matter to you?
Well, okay, I'll tell you one sort of funny personal one and then one that's more professional. So the funny personal one is I've gotten the comment frequently that I give really good hugs. And I think that comes from, partly like that I enjoy hugging, but also that when you have thousands of people in your arms over the years, you kind of get better at it. So I think that's kind of a cute comment that I found meaningful because, I like giving hugs and it's such a beautiful experience for humans to have. And then the second one is more professional. I think this comes more from my teaching. I have always chosen to present leading and following for everyone, and I want everyone to learn both, at least at the beginning, not separate that by gender. And for me, also the idea of connecting, leading and following as a way of feeling connected and together and creating something together has always been a priority. And so when students will say, "Oh, I really love your class because of these values, because these are the things you're highlighting," that means a lot to me because it feels like an affirmation, right, of something that matters to me also matters to someone else. So that feels good.
Yeah, that's very interesting to hear. So I'm going to give you a new comment. I believe that you have a calm spirit.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So my last question, since you've been teaching tango and perhaps, bringing in followership, I'm sure that you probably have organizations as, some of your target audiences. How has the reception been like, especially when you want to teach a subject as complicated as followership and you bring in tango? Do you think people have received it more, or you think there's been more pushback?
And well, I'll tell you about a recent engagement I had. This is in an organization you're asking, right? So this engagement specifically, they were requesting movement activities. So it wasn't a surprise, right? And I wouldn't try to do that. I wouldn't spring that on someone. I always announce what I'm doing. But so I was brought in to facilitate some movement activities specifically around collaboration. So that team was ready for it, right? They were open to it. And, at the end, they said that we had done a series of movement activities and then some debriefing and some writing. And they said that the movement was the most, that was their favorite. Like that was the most powerful, I think, partly because it's unusual, but also once you have your body involved in something, you have all kinds of epiphanies, right? And because your body gives you so much information, right, that you don't get if you're just sitting talking. or even writing. Once you stand up and you're interacting with someone in movement, your body tells you, like, oh, this is what it feels like to be connected. This is what it feels like to respond to someone, right? Follow, to really follow. It's very active. It's very enlivening. It's not passive at all. Or this is what it means to guide someone, right? To lead them, right? And that's actually maybe not what I thought it was, right? It's more together. It's more, it has the component of listening and attentiveness, and following suddenly has this component of initiation that I didn't think it had. So you feel in your body that these roles are so reciprocal and kind of flow back and forth. And that, I think, is a big realization for a lot of people, that they don't soon forget. And then they later can kind of apply that to their work life. So it was great to hear that that was, for this group, the most memorable, and that's generally what I find, right, with groups is, again, partly because they never get the chance, and partly because just physical movement and interaction is inherently like a powerful thing.
Hmm. So for listeners who would like to learn more about Tango, I would recommend your podcast, Lead and Follow. I just listened to the first part of a three series on how you started Tango, and how you have grown over the years. So I'd recommend listeners to follow and listen to your podcast. So my final question. Um, so you are very much affiliated with the Global Followership Conference, and I know you play active role in ensuring that the conference holds and achieves its goal. What do you think the listeners should know about the conference? Because I try my best to promote the Global Followership Conference. I have been a beneficiary of the conference. I've been greatly inspired by the work we do through the conference. What would you like the listeners to know about the Global Followership Conference?
Well, I would love the listeners to know that the steering committee, the organizing committee of this conference, practices leading and following in their organization and the way they work together. And that produces a beautiful conference experience. It produces a conference experience that is intimate and connected and enlivening and creative in a way that I think is very, very unusual. And that is the feedback that we have consistently gotten for 4 years, is that this environment has something about it that's enlivening and connected and inspiring, that the participants have not felt otherwise. And I believe it's because the central organizing body of this conference is in their conversations and in their planning, practicing this creative leading and following relationship with each other. So it's a little bit like proof of concept, right? But it is special, both the way it's done in process and the outcome. And that's my experience as well. Of course, I'm biased, but yeah, but when I'm there, there's, for example, a very overt effort to balance scholarship and practice, to balance creative methods of learning with academic methods of learning, to bring in many, many embodied practices, right? Whether it's using visual imagery, pipe cleaners, dance movement, games, other things. There's a lot of variety, right, in ways of learning. And that's also very special. So, yes, globalfollowership.com.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So before we leave, I'm going to ask, so I don't know much about Tango, but what's the most amazing thing? What's the craziest dance type, if there's anything like that you have experienced or you have seen in Tango that that you think people should learn about?
What's the most interesting thing I've seen
Yeah.
about Tango?
Yeah, the most interesting things, the most innovative thing about Tango that I believe that people should know about.
Well, I think the most interesting thing for many people to discover about tango is that it doesn't have a basic step. And I might have mentioned that earlier, but a basic step in partner dance is a repeating rhythmic pattern. It's always the same. So in a waltz, it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, for example. And the tango doesn't have a basic step. There's no repeating rhythm. And that that is one thing that makes it different, and one thing that makes the leading and following roles very sophisticated. Because in order to move together, you have to decide together what rhythm you're on all the time. You can pause, you can dance on multiple rhythms in tango music. So you're always deciding that, and that brings the leading and following up a level, right? Up to a very high level of sophistication. The second thing that I'll just give you another thing about tango structurally, which makes it super interesting, is that unlike other partner dances, you also can change feet, right? So if anyone has an image of partner dance, they usually think the leader moves the right foot, the follower moves the left foot, right? And they're always symmetrical, right? You have to communicate all of the material of the dance as it's being improvised. So those two things, no basic step and then switching feet, make it really, really special and make the relationship very elevated.
Well, thank you so much. I've really had an amazing time speaking with you today and learning from your experiences and the work you do.
Thank you so much, Israel. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Future of Leadership podcast today. If you are here to kindly share, subscribe, leave a review, and follow us across our social media platforms, including Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, all at TYIL. See you in the next episode.